My sister begged me for $3,200 to move out, but when my car broke down and I couldn't pay 1 month, she turned my parents against me. Until police discovered she was scamming everyone and stole $3,500. I'm 29 years old. I work in logistics for a distribution company, and I need to get this story off my chest. Because what happened with my sister? Veronica basically destroyed my relationship with my parents and made me question everything I thought I knew about my family. The thing is, I was always the responsible kid, you know, the one who got good grades, the one who got a stable job, the one who never caused problems. Veronica, on the other hand, was always the baby of the family, and my parents, Sandra and Raymond, treated her like she was made of glass, like anything you asked her to do was too much for her. She's 24 now, but when all this started, she was 23. And believe me, she acts like she's 15. I guess I should start at the beginning, or at least at the moment when everything went to hell. About a year and a half ago, Veronica came to my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, like 3 inches the afternoon, with her eyes all red like she'd been crying, and she told me she needed to talk to me urgently. I was watching the game, but obviously I turned off the TV because I thought something serious had happened. I don't know. Maybe she'd fought with her boyfriend or something. But no. What she told me was that she couldn't stand living with my parents anymore. That Sandra treated her like a child. That Raymond controlled her too much. That she needed her space to be able to grow and mature and become an independent person. And I, idiot that I am, believed every word because she sounded so sincere, so desperate, so, I don't know, so convincing. She told me, Patrick, "You're the only person I can trust, the only one who understands me. I need to get out of that house or I'm going to go crazy." And then she came with her plan, which basically consisted of me paying the first month's rent and deposit for an apartment, and that she would look for a job immediately, and in a few months she'd already be paying for everything on her own. She swore on everything sacred that she wasn't. I'm going to let me down. That she just needed this opportunity. That she was going to prove to everyone that she could be responsible. The truth is, I had my doubts, because Veronica had never kept a job for more than 3 months straight. She always found some excuse to quit, or they'd fire her for being late or missing too much. But she was my sister, you know? And part of me wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. So I ended up accepting. We found a studio apartment in a decent area. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was clean and safe, like $650 a month plus utilities. I paid the first month, the deposit, which was another $650. And on top of that, I went with her to buy basic furniture because the apartment was completely empty. We bought a bed, a small IKEA couch, a table with 2 chairs, pots, plates, sheets, towels, all the basics you need to live. I think in total I spent like $3,200 on everything, which for me wasn't a small amount of money, but it wasn't going to leave me on the street either. And I thought, well, it's an investment in my sister's future. It's worth it. The first 2 months, everything seemed to be fine, or at least that's what I thought. Veronica would send me messages from time to time saying she was looking for work, that she'd had some interviews, that she'd have news soon. I'd transfer her the rent each month and she'd thank me effusively, tell me I was the best brother in the world, that she'd never forget what I was doing for her. My parents, by the way, didn't know anything about this because Veronica had specifically asked me not to tell them that she wanted to prove to them she could do it on her own without them finding out until she was already completely established. And I, again being an idiot, agreed to keep the secret. But then I started noticing weird things. Veronica was posting Instagram stories, going out to eat at restaurants, going to bars with friends, buying new clothes. When I'd ask her about her job interviews, she'd give me vague answers, that she was waiting for them to call her, that the hiring process was very slow, that surely next week she'd have news. 3 months passed, 4 months, and nothing. I kept paying her rent religiously every month, and she still hadn't gotten a job. When I confronted her, she'd tell me it was very difficult to find something good, that she didn't want to accept just anything just to accept it, that she needed to find something she really liked and where she could grow professionally. I mean, seriously, what world was she living in? The situation reached its limit when, about 6 months ago, my car broke down. It was a 2014. Honda Civic, nothing luxurious, but it was mine, and I needed it to go to work every day. Turns out the transmission was damaged, and the repair was going to cost like $2,500. I had savings, of course, but between paying Veronica's rent every month and my own expenses, I didn't have enough to cover the car repair without being really tight. So I called Veronica and explained the situation. I told her, look, this month I'm not going to be able to pay your rent because I need to fix my car urgently, but next month we'll be back to normal. I just need you to cover it this month or talk to your landlord to ask for an extension. And you know what she did? She exploded. She literally started screaming at me on the phone about how dare I abandon her like that she had trusted me, that I had promised I was going to help her, that now, what was she going to do? I tried to explain that I wasn't abandoning her, that it was just 1 month, that it was a real emergency, but she didn't want to hear anything. She hung up the phone on me, and when I tried to call her back, she sent me straight to voicemail. For 2 whole weeks, she ignored me, didn't answer my messages, my calls, nothing. It was like I had committed the worst crime in the world for not being able to pay her rent for 1 month after having paid 5 months straight. When she finally talked to me again, it was to tell me she'd already talked to our parents about the situation. And that's when I realized things had gotten completely out of control, because what Veronica had told Sandra and Raymond had absolutely nothing to do with reality. According to her, I had forced her to move out, I had promised I would pay for everything indefinitely, and now I was abandoning her without any explanation. She told them she'd been looking for work desperately, but that I had told her not to worry, that I would take care of everything. And that suddenly, and without warning, I had told her I wasn't going to help her anymore. Completely made up, completely false. But my parents believed every word. 2 days later, I got a call from my dad. Raymond was furious. Like I'd never heard him so angry in my life. He yelled at me about how dare I do that? How could I be so irresponsible? That Veronica was my sister and I had the obligation to take care of her. I tried to explain that things weren't like Veronica had told them, that I had been helping her for months out of my own pocket without them knowing, that it had been her who asked me for help in the first place. But he wouldn't let me finish. He just kept yelling that I was a bad brother, that I was selfish, that I only thought about myself. My mom got on the other extension and basically told me the same thing, that she was very disappointed in me, that she never thought I'd be capable of abandoning my sister like that. I hung up the phone, shaking with rage. I literally felt like something was going to happen to me. I couldn't believe that after everything I had done, after having given Veronica thousands of dollars, after having bought all her furniture, after having paid 5 months of rent, now, it turned out I was the villain of the story. I tried calling Veronica to confront her, but obviously she didn't answer. I sent her like 20 text messages, explaining that what she had done was completely wrong, that lying to our parents was unacceptable, that she needed to tell them the truth immediately. Her response was basically that she had only told them her version of events, that if I wanted I could tell them mine, but that she wasn't going to rectify anything, because from her perspective, what she'd told them was true. My parents insisted we have a family meeting to resolve the situation. I really didn't want to go because I knew it was going to be basically an ambush against me. But in the end I accepted because I thought that maybe if I showed them concrete evidence of everything I had done for Veronica, they would finally believe me. I printed all the receipts from the bank transfers, the receipts for the furniture I had bought. I even had text messages where Veronica thanked me for paying her rent. I arrived at my parents' house on a Saturday morning with my folder full of evidence, ready to prove I wasn't the bad guy in the movie. The meeting was a total disaster. We were all sitting in the living room, me on one couch, Veronica on the other, my parents in their chairs. I started showing them all the evidence, explaining chronologically how things had been, how Veronica had come to ask me for help, how I had accepted on the condition that she look for work, how she had never fulfilled her part of the deal. I showed the bank transfers. I showed the receipts. I showed the messages. I thought that with all that it would be enough to prove my point, but no, my parents kept looking at me with distrust, as if everything was a trick or manipulation on my part. Raymond told me the transfers didn't prove anything, that maybe I had forced Veronica to accept the money. Sandra said the messages could be taken out of context, that surely there were other messages where I said horrible things to Veronica, and that's why she felt forced to thank me. Veronica was sitting there with a victim face, with teary eyes, nodding at everything my parents said. At one point, she even had the nerve to say that yes, it was true that I had paid for some things, but that I had done it reluctantly, that I was always complaining, that I always made her feel like a burden, which was completely false. I had never complained to her directly. Quite the opposite. I had always been patient and understanding. I left that house feeling completely defeated. There was no way to win. No matter how much evidence I had, my parents had already decided I was the guilty one, and nothing I said was going to change their opinion. During the following weeks, I tried to stay away from all the family drama. I focused on my work, on fixing my car, on my own life. Veronica apparently continued living in her apartment, although I have no idea how she was paying rent because I definitely wasn't giving her money anymore. Then, like a month after all that drama, I got a call from a number I didn't know. I answered, and it was Veronica's landlord. He asked me if I was Patrick, Veronica's brother, and when I told him yes, he started explaining that Veronica had abandoned the apartment like 2 weeks ago without saying anything, that she had left the place a disaster, that several pieces of furniture were missing, including the small refrigerator that came with the apartment, and that the damages were going to exceed the deposit I had paid. He was calling me because Veronica had given him my number as an emergency contact when she signed the contract. I explained that I had nothing to do with that Veronica was an adult responsible for her own decisions, and that he would have to find a way to charge her directly. The guy sounded frustrated but understood the situation. That same afternoon, I got a message from my cousin Cassandra, who is basically my best friend, besides being my cousin. She sent me some screenshots from Instagram, where Veronica was posting photos from Miami, in what looked like a pretty expensive resort, with her friends drinking cocktails by the pool, with the caption, "Needed this vacation." I mean, she couldn't pay her rent. Supposedly she was in a desperate financial situation, but she had money to go on vacation to Miami. Cassandra asked me what was up with Veronica. I briefly told her what had happened, and she told me something definitely didn't add up. I started investigating more, because at this point I was genuinely worried that Veronica was involved in something shady. I looked up Marcus, her ex-boyfriend from like 2 years ago, with whom she supposedly had ended on bad terms. I sent him a message explaining I needed to ask him something about Veronica, and he agreed to talk to me. We arranged to meet at a cafe near my work one day after my shift. When I told him the whole story of what had happened, Marcus laughed bitterly and told me not to be surprised that Veronica had done exactly the same thing to him. Apparently, when they were together, Veronica had asked him to lend her money for various emergency expenses, always with the promise that she'd pay him back soon. Marcus told me he had lent her like $2,000 in total over several months, and that she never paid him back a cent. When he finally asked her to return at least something, she made a huge drama, accused him of being cheap and materialistic, and broke up with him saying she couldn't be with someone who only cared about money. After talking to Marcus, I started putting the pieces together. Cassandra gave me more information she had found on social media. Apparently, Veronica had been going out quite often during all these months, always to expensive places, always with new clothes, always with her friends living a life she definitely couldn't afford. With the $650 a month I was giving her, the photos showed she'd been on several short trips to nearby cities, that she'd gone to concerts, that she'd bought a new phone, that basically she was living like she had a well-paid job, when in reality, she didn't have any income. One afternoon, I got a message from a girl named Lindsay, who said she was Veronica's ex-roommate from like 3 years ago. She had found me on Facebook because Cassandra had posted something vague about the situation, and Lindsay saw my name mentioned. She told me that Veronica had lived with her for 6 months and that the experience had been horrible. According to Lindsay, Veronica had borrowed $800 from her to cover her part of the rent and expenses for 2 months, promising to pay her when a supposed tax refund came. The refund never came, or if it did, Veronica never paid her, and eventually Veronica just moved out from one day to the next without saying anything, leaving her hanging with the full rent. Lindsay told me she had tried to contact her multiple times, but that Veronica had blocked her everywhere. At this point, I was completely convinced that Veronica had a behavior pattern of manipulating people to get money, using that money to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford, and then disappearing when people asked her to fulfill her commitments. But I still didn't understand where she was getting money from now. The answer came when Cassandra did a little more detective work and found that Veronica was tagging a girl named Aurora in many of her recent posts. Aurora had a pretty suspicious Instagram profile, with ostentatious photos, with phrases about financial freedom and generating passive income, with links to things that looked like multi-level schemes or maybe worse. Cassandra and I speculated that maybe Veronica had gotten into some kind of shady business with this Aurora, maybe selling pyramid products or even something more serious. Honestly, at that point, I had already given up on Veronica. I had accepted that the money I had given her was basically lost money, that she was never going to pay me back, and that the relationship with her was completely broken. I had also accepted that my parents were always, I'm going to believe her over me, no matter how much evidence I had. I was focusing on rebuilding my life and forgetting about all the family drama. But then Veronica called me. It was completely unexpected, like she never called me. She always communicated by messages. I answered cautiously, and her tone was super casual, super friendly, as if nothing had happened. She told me, "Hey Patrick, how are you? It's been a while since we talked. I miss you. We should get together for lunch one of these days." I was completely baffled, because literally 2 months ago I'd had a giant fight with our parents because of her, and now she was talking to me like we were best friends in the world. I asked her directly what she wanted, and she got offended, told me, why did I assume she wanted something? That she just wanted to reconnect with her brother because she missed me. I didn't believe her for a second but still agreed to see her, mostly out of curiosity to see what she was plotting now. We didn't get to have that lunch, because 2 days before the date we had agreed on, I got a call from my mom. Sandra sounded distressed, worried, and the first thing she said was, "I need to talk to you about your sister." My first thought was, oh no, now what? But what she told me left me completely frozen. Turns out, Veronica had been arrested. Apparently she'd been stealing money from several people, not just borrowing it, but literally stealing it. One of the friends she'd been hanging out with, not Aurora, but another girl, had filed a formal complaint after Veronica stole something like $3,500 from her. The exact details weren't clear, but apparently Veronica had managed to access this girl's bank account through some kind of deception and had made several transfers to her own account. My mom was crying on the phone, saying she couldn't believe her baby was in jail, that they needed to get her out of there immediately, that bail was $5,000 and if I could help pay it. And that's when finally, I told her no. I explained that for months I had been helping Veronica, that I had spent thousands of dollars on her, that she had lied to me and lied to them, that there was evidence she'd been scamming people for a long time, and that maybe this was exactly what she needed to finally face real consequences for her actions. Sandra got angry with me, told me I was cruel. How could I leave my sister in jail? But I stood firm. I told her that if she and Raymond wanted to get her out, they could do it with their own money, but that I wasn't going to be part of this. Cassandra told me later that my parents did pay the bail and that Veronica got out of jail. Apparently, she's facing pretty serious criminal charges and will probably end up with a sentence, or at least probation and the obligation to pay restitution. The girl who filed the complaint wasn't the only victim. Apparently, other people also started adding their own complaints once word got out. Veronica is living back with my parents, not by choice but because she literally has nowhere else to go. All her friends cut her off and nobody wants to have anything to do with her. I stopped talking to my parents after the call about bail. Not because I'm angry with them. Well, yes, I'm angry, but more than anything because I realized there's no point trying to maintain a relationship with people who simply refuse to see reality. Raymond and Sandra still think Veronica is a victim of circumstances, that people took advantage of her, that I was cruel for not helping her. There's no way to make them understand that Veronica is responsible for her own decisions and that facing consequences is the only way that maybe, someday, she'll change. Last week, Cassandra told me she heard that Veronica is seeing a therapist mandated by the court and that supposedly she's trying to straighten out her life. Honestly, I don't know if I believe it. I've seen too many times the same pattern, the same promises, the same manipulation. Maybe this time is different. Maybe really hitting rock bottom made her reflect. but I'm not going to sit around waiting to see what happens. I moved on with my life. I got a better job a few months ago with a decent salary increase. I fixed my car. I'm saving to buy a new one next year. I have my own apartment, my own routines, my own peace of mind away from all that drama. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. If maybe I should have been tougher with Veronica from the beginning instead of allowing the situation to go so far. But then I remember that I wasn't responsible for her decisions, that I did what I thought was best at the time with the information I had, and that in the end, she was the one who chose to lie, manipulate, and steal. Cassandra tells me not to blame myself, that I was more than generous, and that Veronica took advantage of my goodwill. I guess she's right. The only thing I know is that I'm not going to put myself in that position again. I'm not going to let anyone, family or not, manipulate me that way again. And that's enough for now.